Moses and Ramesses, brothers divided, the prince who walked away from everything. Picture this: two boys racing through the gilded corridors of the most powerful palace on earth, their laughter echoing off walls covered in gold and lapis lazuli. One is the biological grandson of Pharaoh, the other, a Hebrew slave baby plucked from a floating basket in the Nile, raised as Egyptian royalty. They are brothers in every way that matters, until the day one of them discovers the truth that will tear apart an empire. This isn't just ancient history. This is the story of Moses and Ramesses, two men who should have ruled the world together, but instead became the ultimate rivals in one of civilization's most dramatic confrontations. And here's what will shock you. The archaeological evidence suggests this story might be far more historically grounded than you ever imagined: the impossible adoption. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the Hebrew infant in the Egyptian palace. How does a slave child end up as a prince? It sounds like pure fantasy, but here's where history gets interesting. During the New Kingdom period, the Egyptian royal court was far more cosmopolitan than popular culture suggests. Foreign princes were routinely raised in Pharaoh's household as both hostages and future allies. The palace was filled with Syrian, Nubian, and Canaanite children of nobility. But Moses was different. He wasn't a diplomatic bargaining chip. He was, according to tradition, found by a princess who defied her own father's genocidal decree. The Pharaoh had ordered all Hebrew male infants drowned in the Nile, a horrifying attempt at population control that eerily mirrors other historical atrocities. Yet his own daughter, moved by a crying baby, committed an act of civil disobedience that would change everything. Imagine the tension in that palace. Every time Moses walked past Egyptian guards, servants, or officials, someone knew his secret. The princess knew. Moses' biological sister Miriam, who cleverly arranged for their mother to become his nursemaid, knew. And eventually Moses himself would know. This wasn't just an adoption, it was a powder keg. Growing up in a golden cage, ancient Egyptian princes received the finest education in the known world. Moses and Ramesses would have studied together under the same tutors, learning hieroglyphics, mathematics, military strategy, and the complex rituals of Egyptian religion. They would have trained together in chariot warfare, the cutting-edge military technology of the Bronze Age. They would have hunted together in the desert, perhaps even saved each other's lives. The bond between brothers raised together is profound, especially when you're being groomed to rule an empire. Ramesses the Seku, who most historians believe is the pharaoh of the Exodus, had numerous brothers and half-brothers. Competition for succession was fierce and often deadly. But in this pressure cooker environment, Moses, the outsider, the adopted one, may have been the one person Ramesses could truly trust. After all, Moses could never inherit the throne himself. He posed no threat, or so everyone thought. The murder that changed everything. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn. One day, the Prince Moses witnessed an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave. In that moment, something inside him snapped. The papyrus veil of his privileged life tore open, and he saw clearly. These were his people suffering. This was his heritage. These were the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob enslaved in a foreign land. Moses killed the Egyptian overseer. He looked around, saw no witnesses, and buried the body in the sand. But murder in the ancient world wasn't like murder today. There were no detective units, no forensic analysis. What mattered was whether it became public knowledge, and it did. The next day, when Moses tried to intervene in a fight between two Hebrews, one of them threw his crime back in his face. "Who made you a prince and judge over us? Will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses' world shattered. The secret was out. The penalty for murdering an Egyptian official was death, even for a prince, especially for a prince who wasn't really Egyptian at all. The brothers' dilemma. Now imagine Ramesses receiving the news. His brother, his closest companion, is a murderer. But more than that, Moses has revealed where his true loyalties lie. Every privileged moment they shared, every lesson, every honor bestowed upon Moses by the royal family, and he sides with the slaves? The betrayal must have cut deeper than any knife. In ancient Egypt, the social order wasn't just culture, it was considered divine law. Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order and justice, demanded everyone know their place. Slaves were slaves. Royalty was royalty. Moses had violated something more sacred than any modern law. He'd challenged the very structure of reality as Egyptians understood it. Did Ramesses want to protect Moses? Did he argue with his father for clemency? Or did he feel relief when Moses fled into the Midianite desert, disappearing from Egyptian records for 40 years? We'll never know. But what we do know is that Moses' exile allowed Ramesses to ascend without competition, without the complicated presence of his adoptive brother complicating his rule. 40 years of silence, 4 decades, an entire generation. Moses herded sheep in the wilderness while Ramesses transformed Egypt into perhaps the greatest power it would ever be. Ramesses II built more monuments, fathered more children, over 100, won more military victories, and lived longer than almost any pharaoh in history. He was quite literally having himself carved into history as a living god. Meanwhile, Moses was having a very different kind of transformation. The prince became a shepherd. The Egyptian became a Hebrew. The murderer became a prophet. At a burning bush on Mount Horeb, Moses received an assignment that must have seemed insane. Return to Egypt, face your brother, and demand that he release 2 million slaves who form the backbone of his economy. Let my people go. 5 words that would echo through eternity. The Brothers' War. When Moses finally returned to Egypt, now 80 years old with his brother Aaron beside him, imagine that first confrontation. 2 old men, once boys who played together in palace gardens, now facing each other across an impossible divide. Moses, weathered by the desert, speaking with the authority of an unseen God. Ramesses, resplendent in the double crown, speaking with the authority of visible, undeniable power. Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? Ramesses demanded. I do not know the Lord, and moreover I will not let Israel go. The battle lines were drawn, not just between Egypt and Israel, but between 2 brothers, between 2 worldviews, between 2 gods, the God of Pharaoh and the God of Moses. What followed was catastrophic. 10 plagues ravaged Egypt, each one systematically dismantling the Egyptian pantheon. The Nile, sacred to Hapi, turned to blood. The sun, embodied by Ra, was darkened. And finally, the ultimate horror, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt, including Ramesses' own son and heir. Here's what makes this story so devastating. Ramesses could have stopped it. After almost every plague, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to let the people go. Was this stubbornness? Pride? Or was it something more tragic, a brother who simply couldn't bear to admit that Moses had been right all along? The night of the Passover, when the death angel swept through Egypt, Ramesses lost his son, Moses' nephew, a boy who might have played with Moses' own children in another life, another reality where adoption and blood didn't have to be enemies. Broken, devastated, Ramesses finally capitulated. Go, leave Egypt. Take your flocks and herds and be gone. But the story doesn't end with liberation. It ends with one final chase, one last confrontation at the Red Sea, where Ramesses, whether driven by rage, pride, or the impossible hope of undoing what had been done, led his army in pursuit. And there, at the water's edge, the brothers faced each other for the final time. The legacy. The waters closed over Egypt's army. Ramesses survived, returned to his kingdom, and never spoke of it again, at least not in any record that has survived. Moses led his people into the wilderness, toward a promised land he would never enter. 2 brothers divided by choice, by destiny, by the gods they served. What makes this story eternally compelling isn't just the spectacle of plagues and miracles. It's the intimate tragedy at its heart. These were brothers. They shared memories, inside jokes, childhood adventures. They knew each other's fears and dreams. And yet, when forced to choose between love and loyalty, Between brotherhood and belief, both men chose their people over each other. In the end, Moses and Rameses prove something profound. The most epic conflicts in history aren't between strangers. They're between people who once loved each other. They're civil wars, family feuds, divorces writ large on the stage of empires. That's what makes their story immortal. That's why, 3,000 years later, we're still captivated by two brothers divided and the choice that neither of them could avoid making.